I'm Julie Bartkey with this Senate update. The first committee deadline is just days away, and chairs are busy moving big policy bills out of the committee of origin. Now, the Senate Education Committee presented its education policy bill on Wednesday. A few of its key components include allowing the district's flexibility to move to a 4-day school week, easing the process to license in Minnesota those who currently have out-of-state teaching licenses, and allowing teachers more time to pass a basic skills test. Here is some of the public testimony from Wednesday from that committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Melissa Sweetmilk. I am the interim director of Metro Deaf School. Good morning, members of the committee and Mr. Chair. I am Jenna King, and I am a parent here. We want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today and to share our concerns with an issue that has arisen regarding our preschool. Metro Deaf School is a charter school in St. Paul, Minnesota, that serves deaf and hard of hearing students, mostly from the metro area. I'm here to discuss an issue that has had an impact on our preschool children and their families. We're hoping that the amendment that we propose will have be able to address this issue. With me, I have Jenna King. We serve K through 12, pre-K through 12 students in the Twin Cities metro area. We are 100% special ed, which makes us a very unique program. Students are generally enrolled at MDS through district placement or through parent enrollment, through parent choice. Since 1996, MDS has had a pre-K program and has enrolled our pre-K ECSE students through the same two options. This has not been an issue until it was brought to our attention through a memo from MDE that this applies only to that parent choice
only applies to K through 12.
Only applies to K-12. Now going forward, all of our students, our pre-K students, must be district placed. Our students from last year, 2013-2014, have been grandfathered in through MDE. This new issue has created a problem with our preschool, and it provides barriers for families that want to enroll their students at MDS, but whose districts will not allow for them to be placed, even if they already have older siblings that are staying at MDS, that are at MDS enrolled. This goes against the spirit of the parent choice law, in which parents can choose the school or program that they feel best meets their child's needs. This becomes more important when special education, and particularly deaf education, is involved and becomes a factor. There are several layers to this issue. MDS is a charter school. It provides special education and is a public school. We have a myriad of laws that apply to us, and sometimes it is difficult to discern or interpret the overlap of several statutes, whether it's charter school law, special education law, general education law, early childhood, the list goes on. Adding to this mix are the new statutes allowing charter schools to provide pre-K programs, which has understandably been a confusing process for MDS. As we already have already had a pre-K ECSE program in place for many years, and also provide ECSE, which is a mandated service. The MDE, Minnesota Department of Education, has been providing us with assistance in sorting through these layers and statutes, as well as taking into consideration our unique status as a school with the services that we provide. I'd like to thank Commissioner Casilius and the Minnesota Department of Education for their help and time with this issue. Like I mentioned before, there has been an amendment proposed that will address this issue, and I hope you will take this into consideration and support this amendment that allow deaf and hard of hearing children to have access to services and programs that fit their needs earlier, allowing for language acquisition and learning instead of delaying this until they are in kindergarten and 5 years old. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Sweetman.
And my name is Jenna King, and I'm here to talk about the parent district placement law. I want to tell you a story about this because right now parents do not have the choice to place their children in a special ed preschool, pre-kindergarten program. And to illustrate this, I want to tell you a story about my experience. Our oldest daughter, Delaney, was born in Florida. And a few days after she was born, we found out that she was deaf. And at first our first concern was, what are we going to do about her education? Where is she going to get the best education? My husband, who is also here, we are both products of the deaf education system, and so we know what was necessary to help our daughter succeed. We lived in the Tampa Bay area, and their deaf program, we weren't sure would meet our needs. My husband is a proud fourth-generation deaf person from Lakeville, Minnesota. And we started doing research, and we found Minnesota or Metro Deaf School, and we were very impressed with their program. They had proven results with their students. We even traveled to the school, and we were very impressed with what they had to offer and wanted our daughter to go to school there. And we found out that there was also a parent placement option, so we thought, great. And we sold our house in Florida. My husband negotiated with his company to make sure he would be able to work remotely from home. So we packed up everything and we moved to Minnesota and we looked for a house. We signed a contract for a house. And then I remember we were so excited that day. We contacted the Metro Deaf School and said, we're ready to enroll our daughter in your school. And they said, I'm sorry, we can't accept your daughter. And we were shocked. We found out that the Minnesota Department of Education had just eliminated parental choice and required only district placement option for students, and so for pre-K. So then we had to check out the St. Paul Public School program. So my husband and I tried to keep an open mind, and we toured the St. Paul program, the Four Seasons Elementary School program, and we looked around and we really weren't happy with what we saw there. We didn't feel like that was what was going to meet our daughter's needs. So we canceled the contract for the house and decided to rent a house instead, and we got into negotiations, and luckily Metro Deaf School was willing to help us negotiate and work with the Minnesota Department of Education, and after a while they figured out a way to grandfather our daughter into their school. Well, recently our second daughter was born, and we found out that she too is deaf. And we thought, oh boy, here we go again. Like my husband likes to say, being deaf is a full-time job in and of itself. So immediately, our daughter Elise was placed in the Birth to 3 program here in St. Paul. And we were very direct from the beginning that we wanted her to be placed at Metro Deaf School, where her sister was going to school. That's the only thing that made sense to us. But the people who were working the program right away were saying, nope, I'm sorry, it's the law. She will not be able to go to that school for preschool. I'm sorry. And we wanted to have an option based on her needs, not on this arbitrary rule, this law. And we also don't want our girls to be separated into 2 different programs. So we've been here for 2 years in Minnesota, and those 2 years have been very stressful. So my husband has been looking for a job someplace else, and he found a job in Austin, Texas. And we're really disappointed in many ways because we wanted to stay here. But we as parents have to look at the needs for our daughters and find a program that is the best thing that will fit their needs. I so much wanted to stay here in Minnesota. I love it here. But I can't gamble with my second daughter's education. Because from age 0 to 5, that is the most critical time for language development. So it's very important that from 0 to 5 that a student is in the right program. I can't have my youngest daughter in a subpar program when there's a strong deaf school in her own backyard that could be an option, but she can't go to it because of the poorly worded law. And I don't want her to be separated from her older sister. So I hope that you will please consider that age birth to 5 is the most important time for children to be able to have the best access to the strongest educational foundation, to find the places that they can thrive. That's the most important time frame. And I don't want other families to have to go through what we did. So please consider creating an amendment that clarifies that special ed preschool, pre-kindergarten, that it can be a parent-placed program where parents can be the ones who decide what best fits the needs of their children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. King, Ms. Sweetmilk, for sharing your testimony. Reference was made to an amendment. We have not received an amendment, but I'm going to ask the Department of Education to please respond. I believe you indicated there's been dialogue with them, and if they could please share their comments and suggestions on moving ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Adosh Uni with the Minnesota Department of Education. Members from the Department of Education have met with the advocates yesterday, and we had a good conversation about the fix that was discussed here. There is proposed language in the works. I believe since it has a financial impact, we're waiting to put that on in an education finance environment. But I know we are hashing through language that is agreeable to everyone that limits the impact on Metro Deaf School.
Thank you, Mr. Senator Bonoff and then Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to know what would be the fiscal implication. It's hard to understand that. And then when you say that limits the impact on Metro Deaf School, what do you mean by limits the impact? Because I think their testimony was so compelling that we around the table want there to be parental choice. And so could you expound on what you said?
I'm going to have to phone a friend here as I was not present for the discussions.
Mr. Chair and members, Beth Fraser with the Commission of Deaf, Deafblind, and Hard of Hearing Minnesotans. And my understanding is that we have come up with language that will eliminate the problem for the Metro Deaf School. And my understanding is that depending upon how broadly or narrowly the language is written, it would have broader or narrower fiscal implications. And so I think the language, at this point, the proposal will be written to just apply to the Metro Deaf School. Education policy is not my area of expertise, so I can't really elaborate more than that. But there will, of course, be a fiscal note on the proposal, and that could help help us all understand the fiscal impact.
Thank you. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not sure who from the department can answer this. Can you tell me what in your analysis changed and why we would not include a charter school to be a valid program and have to have a district referral for pre-K? I mean, we've parents we don't have a mandated 4-year-old program or any preschool program. So why would we, is it just limited to the deaf school? Is it related to, is it limited to special ed? What are the parameters of this new finding that you found, and how did you come to it?
Mr. Chair, Senator Pratt, I am going to have to get some clarification from the department and the staff there that worked on this matter. I know that the discussions are ongoing. I believe this is out of, since the discussions are ongoing, I'm going to have to get some clarification and get back to the committee on the answer.
We have Senator Pratt.
When did this policy go into place and become effective?
Mr. Winnie, maybe you're taking notes on that, but the effective date on policy?
Again, Mr. Chair, Senator Pratt, I don't have that information in front of me. I will have to respond back to the committee.
No, we have Senators Kent, Kiffmeyer, and Dames. I might just preempt that first by saying it's our desire that you have these continued conversations today with the hope that we could have an amendment ready to entertain when we act on this tomorrow. Given that you are having those discussions, I would ask that you reach an agreement today based on input that you've had. There was reference to a fiscal implication. We are in policy committee right now, but I think the intent is to address the concerns that have been raised. So that said, we can proceed to let them continue their meeting, or we can express some additional concerns, comments. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just wanted to expound a little on, because you sort of said exactly what I was. I want to make sure we don't lock anything down in the policy omnibus that would be at odds with what might come through the finance, so I appreciate your sense of urgency on this, and I agree. Thank you.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Either for the testifier or for staff, what is the rule or statute, I couldn't find it when I did a quick search, that this is based on? That this issue or contention is stemming from. So what's the rule or statute?
I don't know if Ms. Butler has that. Or, okay, Mr. Winnie, you have that yet?
Mr. Chair, Senator Kiffmeyer, I know the rule that is referenced in my notes here are in reference to responsibility for ensuring provision and instruction of special education services and the statute. Would you like the reference to the statute number? The the statute that where the amended language would need to be going is 126C.05, 125A.75, subdivision 4. That's program and aid approval. And 124D.10, subdivision 8.
I'm sorry, point what?
I'm sorry, 124D.10, subdivision 8. And then the number for the rule is 3525.0800.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Dames.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And this comment or question, I guess, would be to the department, and that is, just a few minutes ago, they said that they had just started talking about this yesterday, and then just a few minutes after that, they said that they'd been in ongoing conversations. And I guess I'd like to know when they expect to have a conclusion. And if they don't have a conclusion by tomorrow, I certainly hope that we have an amendment come forward, that we can move forward. This is an unfortunate situation, and I don't think we can sit idly by and watch this go on. And there's really no excuse this hasn't been ironed out. And I'd like to know from the department how long they've known about this issue and how long they've been in talks with this. If it's just yesterday, or if you related to earlier, it's been an ongoing conversation, which it is, and why it's not done, taken care of.
Mr. Chair, Senator, I believe the issue was brought forth to us very recently, and we immediately scheduled an appointment with the advocates to work through the issue. Met with them yesterday. I will take back the sense of urgency brought up through testimony and from the committee back to the department immediately, and we will work with advocates to try to hash out some type of a workable compromise that the committee can view either today or tomorrow.
Okay. Members, we'll get an update soon. You have flagged the potential financial impact. Not knowing that range, it would likely then be something that would be addressed in our financial bill, which will roll out when we're in a different committee. But we could at least get an update tomorrow. We'd appreciate that, if not before. Okay. Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Sweet Milk and Ms. King, for your testimony. Next,
Thank you.
We have Jim Bartholomew and Heidi Holster, followed by Brad Lundell. As testifiers are approaching, three other items that need to be processed with some amendments. We'll get to those last after we've followed with our testimony on the policy bill. Mr. Bartholomew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. My name is Jim Bartholomew with the Minnesota Business Partnership, and thank you for the opportunity to talk with you about Senate File 1495. While I'd like to highlight some of the provisions that would have a positive impact for students, such as the Chair's proposal in Article 1, Section 7, or Senator Kent's proposal in Article 2, Sections 26 and 27, or Senator Clausen's proposals to streamline licensure, these provisions are overshadowed by the inclusion of the governor's proposal to eliminate several state reading and math exams and the critical information that they would provide families, educators, and the public. These changes are in Article 2, Section 10. Under current law, Minnesotans have 6 years of information on student performance in reading and math, grades 3 through 8. Under the governor's proposal, which eliminates the math MCAs in grades 3 and 4 and the reading MCAs in grades 6 and 7, we're left with only 2 years of combined information, grades 5 and 8. As a parent, would you rather have 6 years of information or just 2? For the state's own accountability system, the MMR, are we at a point where the state says math is no longer important in elementary schools, or reading is not important in middle school? This huge shift in state assessment policies was not recommended by the governor's own testing reduction task force, nor was it recommended by the commissioner when she made her recommendations to the legislature on February 2nd. At the national level, there are diverse coalitions of people and organizations coming together to ask Congress to keep reading and math exams in grades 3 through 8 as a cornerstone of a reauthorized ESEA. The letter that's been handed out in your packets is a reflection of diverse groups, both locally and nationally, including the Education Trust, that want to protect the ability of Minnesotans to have key information in grades 3 through 8 so they can help students in schools. As is mentioned in the letter, the governor's proposal, again, Article 2, Section 10, will negatively impact the work being done by Generation Next to build connections between schools, community groups, and service providers to help students improve their reading and math skills. Why would we create barriers for this type of community-wide engagement? There's also nothing in Senate File 1495 that takes a holistic approach to concerns about too much testing. There's no effort to ask what value local districts get for the extra time and money they spend on third-party tests, nor anything about helping the department to develop and deliver more useful information. There's just a provision in Article 2 telling parents that it's okay to opt out. Just as there was growing consensus over state exams, the governor has offered a proposal to provide Minnesotans with less information and more confusion. We'd like to thank you for your time and commitment in putting together what would otherwise be a good policy bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew. Ms. Hessler.
Good morning. My name is Heidi Hilster. I am with Parents United for Public Schools, Chair Uyghur Committee. One of the components of this bill that we fully support is the reduction of state tests. It's a consistent topic of concern with so many Minnesota families that we hear from and that we work with every day. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hustle. Next, Brad Lundell, followed by Roger Aronson. And Mr. Aronson, you're invited to join Mr. Lundell.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Brad Lundell, very briefly today on behalf of the Minnesota Administrators of Special Education, I want to thank you for putting in Senator Pratt's Senate File 740. We think that's a very, very important piece of legislation on the online reporting bill. I want to apologize to Senator Chamberlain that I didn't get to him sooner, but if you look at Section 62 in Article 2, we'd like to work with him on that dyslexia definition, because I think when you put specific learning disability in that first sentence, there's some confusion. That references a handicapping condition or disability category in rule, and we want to make sure, in talking to folks in talking to staff, I don't think it's the intention of the dyslexia parents in that community that they don't want their children automatically identified as qualifying for special education, so we want to make sure that that's clear. And so, again, Senator Chamberlain, I apologize for not getting to you sooner with this, and we certainly want to work with you and other members to see if there's a middle ground we can find there. Thank you.
And Senator Chamberlain, for the record, we'll assume there'll be that reaching out, or?
I'd love to, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Aronson.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm Roger Aronson. I represent the Elementary and Secondary School Principals Association. First of all, we want to congratulate you on what we think is an excellent bill. We look forward to watching this bill progress and helping you support it as we put in the finance portions of it. A couple of things that I wanted to point out for the committee. Article 3, Sections 1 through 7 represents significant work on Senator Hoffman's discipline bill. That we appreciate Senator Hoffman's work on this, and Senator Clausen's, and the advocates for this as well. I think actually as you get a chance to look at that provision, you're going to see that it's very consistent with the discussion that we had with the committee surrounding Senate File 1001, I think is what the reference was there. And we look forward to attempting to implement those provisions. There are a couple of provisions of Senator Kent's bill in Article 2, 26 and 27 that relate to the assignment of students and improvement plan issues. We're working on language on that, continuing. We sent some language, and we talked to Senator Kent, and I know that Senator Pratt is involved in that issue as well, and we're going to continue to work on that. I would say overall, we really appreciate the fact that this is a bill that isn't going to turn us on our heads next year. You're going to continue to allow us to implement our teacher evaluation systems. We can continue to evaluate and move forward with the bullying issues, with the EL issues, and we thank you for that as well, Mr. Chair. I think we're pleased to say that a lot of the things that don't appear here this year are going to allow us to effectively keep our feet on the ground and administer our schools next year. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Thank you. Ms. Dosland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Valerie Dosland. I represent the Minnesota Association of School Administrators. Would like to just thank you for your work so far on all the various policy bills that have been coming through the committee, and want to just highlight a few of the provisions in the bill that MASA is very excited about. One, we support the testing recommendations that are included in the bill. We've submitted a letter. I don't know if the committee members have seen it yet, but we did submit a letter stating our support. We thank you for your work on providing more school district flexibility in the determination of their school year, of their calendar, when they start school day. Although we would like a permanent repeal of the Labor Day start date, we appreciate the flexibility given this next school year, as well as the four-day school week and the flexible learning year. And then lastly, just appreciate and support your work on regarding teacher licensure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kronquist.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Scott Kronquist with the Association of Metropolitan School District, and just want to echo my thanks to you, Mr. Chairman, and all the committee for the great work this session and really bringing forward a very solid policy bill. Just want to highlight a really few issues. We do appreciate you, Mr. Chairman, bringing forward the testing recommendations that the governor made. But we would like to continue to discuss those with you as you move forward over the next couple of weeks. Quite frankly, I'm getting mixed feedback from members, and they're really still digesting it and really trying to figure out exactly how this is going to impact teacher development, evaluation, et cetera. So, but as you've heard, and you all know, you hear it from your own constituents, there is a strong desire to reduce testing. And so we really appreciate you bringing it forward and hope we can have a continued discussion over the next few weeks on that.
We will.
I'm sure you will. Thank you. Thank you also for the changes in the flexible learning year. We really think that is a local control decision that local school boards should be able to make, so we appreciate that. And we also appreciate the one-year Labor Day exemption, but we think what you have there actually would be a great compromise on an ongoing basis, just to set September 1st. And in that way, when we have those late Labor Days, it would allow school districts a little more flexibility. And then finally, echoing Ms. Doslin, we appreciate the licensure language in the bill. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. We look forward to working with you next several weeks.
Thank you. Senator Pratt.
Thank you. Mr. Kronquist, to Mr. Bartholomew's comments, have your schools talked to you at all about why they're doing their own testing and what the gaps from MDE back to local districts are? And have you had those conversations with MDE?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pratt, yeah, I mean, and as you know, there was a task force that worked on this issue and studied it, and you know, of course, the gaps really tend to be really being able to measure growth and getting results in a timely manner. And we know there's efforts underway to revise the MCAs to try to address some of those issues as well. And then, as I mentioned, another factor really is the teacher evaluation law and the agreements that some of the districts and their bargaining units have in place already, and some of them are using the MCAs, you know, for that purpose. So there's a lot of moving parts in this issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chris, and we would invite anyone else that would like to testify to come to the table as there's room. Ms. Chris.
Mr. Chair, members, I'm Cindy Crest with the Minnesota Association of Colleges for Teacher Education. I just want to thank you for all the work you've done in the licensure area. As I testified, I think that was just last week, on Senate File 559. I think Senator Clausen, I'm sure working with many of you and others, came up with some very reasonable compromises. Our interest is not in making it difficult for people, for example, from out of state to become licensed. Our interest is ensuring that all teachers in our classrooms have met the high standards that you and the Board of Teaching and others have set. And anything we can do to provide appropriate flexibility without undermining those standards, we're behind 100%. I just want to say that I'm the only very part-time lobbyist for MACD, and a lot of our folks are on spring break right now. So tomorrow morning I'm going to be over in the House because we're not quite as pleased with their omnibus policy bill as we are with yours. So there may not be anybody here tomorrow from MACD, but if any questions come up about licensure provisions and we can be of assistance in responding to those, your staff know how to reach me, and we'd be very happy to follow up. So I wasn't even going to say anything today, but I wanted to be sure that my absence tomorrow, if any questions came up, was not somehow seen as a lack of interest in our part or commitment to what you're doing. Thanks.
Be an excused absence. You're on call.
I'll ask my mother for a note.
Yes, welcome.
Mr. Chair, members, I'm Holly Craigthorpe. I'm a Minneapolis teacher, and I'm a Minneapolis and Minnesota parent and an advocate for Educators for Excellence. So I'm representing Educators for Excellence today and our 1,000 members. And I would love the assistance of a page, if possible, to pass out our handout. I want to thank you, of course, for all of your work, and in particular, I want to thank you for making me feel welcome here and for welcoming all of our teachers as we've asked to have meetings with you all. I know that a lot of work went into this omnibus bill, and in particular, I want to thank Senator Clausen for the inclusion of Senate File 559, which is one of our major priorities. I am worried, though, that we might miss real opportunity to work on increasing equity in our schools and in increasing teacher diversity in our schools. And so I want to advocate that we take some bold steps to make a couple of amendments for tomorrow. We are recommending to include Senate File 664, which would hold teacher prep programs accountable Teacher candidates desperately need this kind of data. They should be accessible to them. They're spending thousands of dollars and years on their licensure, and they deserve to know which programs are effective, which ones aren't effective. And in addition, we love to be able to see which programs are serving teachers of color best, and so we would advocate that that data be disaggregated by race for sample sizes of 10 or more to make sure that we protect teacher privacy. I believe that we could work together to get something that you would all support, and that we could maybe make some amendments to the original bill for possible inclusion tomorrow, and I'll be following up with you. Also, I think that we can really change the landscape of hard-to-staff schools by introducing Senate File 1497, which is authored by Mr. Chair and Senator Clausen and Senator Pratt. And that would allow QComp districts to more flexibly use the existing funds for hard-to-staff schools incentives. So I thank you again for your work, and I look forward to hopefully working with you within the next 24 hours. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for your very active participation. Both your recommendations are in play in the Finance Committee. There is a financial implication, but they're alive. Would not be in the policy per se because of the financial implications, but they're alive.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Stump.
Just a follow-up question. If I heard you correctly, that you wanted to use the alternative compensation for placement of hard to find teacher positions versus the alternative compensation for teacher development and evaluation?
So
is that what I heard?
Currently, the bonuses in statute, the bonuses are they're allocated to be used for teacher's personal goal or school goal, meeting those goals, but it restricts the use of the bonuses for any other use. And so our statute is just introducing one additional use for those bonus funds, not necessarily the funds that go toward the teacher evaluation or the job embedded professional development or any of the other components of QComp, but just flexibility specifically for the bonus component for districts who have schools that are hard to staff or positions that are hard to fill, in order to incentivize them with either a hiring bonus or a bonus to retain those teachers that are strong, or to compensate teachers with like an additional prep period, for example, so that we can keep strong teachers in those hard to staff schools.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I just want to remind people who are here and members as well that only 41% of the students in the state, 41% of the students in the state have teachers that receive the QComp or the alternative compensation. So I think before we start spending QComp money to have to fill hard to place positions, I think we ought to have QComp funded or alternative compensation for all teachers throughout the state.
Mr. Chair, Senator, I appreciate those comments, and our members would definitely agree with the support of expanding QComp. And we also believe like districts like mine, like MPS, could use those funds in a new innovative way to attract effective and highly effective teachers to hard to staff schools.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Forsman.
Mr. Chair, Senators, good morning. My name is Frank Forsberg. I work at Greater Twin Cities United Way as a Senior Vice President, and I'm also here today as the chairperson for the Mini Minds Coalition. It's a statewide coalition with more than 100 members, and as you may know, we've been advocating for the past 2 years for early learning scholarships for all low-income children, about 20,000 children who could be served, we think, rather quickly with early learning scholarships. I just have one point for today, and that is on the scholarship cap. And it's noted here in the bill on page 93, and it starts on line 9 if you'd want to take a look. As you may know, when the Minnesota Scholarship Program rolled out 2 years ago, it started with an initial scholarship cap of $5,000 per scholarship. That was in an effort to get that program up and rolling. Last year, legislation was passed to lift the cap and implementation deferred to 2016. The piece that I want to bring to your attention is the line here that says, for fiscal year 2016 and later, the Commissioner shall establish a target for the average scholarship amount based on the results of a rate survey. And it just begs me to ask the question about how might that average scholarship amount be interpreted. So are we thinking that we might move from a hard cap of $5,000 to something incrementally higher that might be an average? That could be one interpretation of that line. The Mini Minds Coalition, I think, would like to see stronger language that would suggest or indicate that scholarships could be used to meet the full needs of our most vulnerable children. And in many cases, that would mean access to a full-day, year-round program. And I just want to make sure that that's a very strong part of the use of scholarships and very strongly considered here, because we'd hate to limit access for the most vulnerable children to the programs that they probably most need. I also want to remind the committee that the state of Minnesota has been the beneficiary of the Race to the Top federal funding, and that 4 of our communities are recognized as transformation zones. The White Earth Indian Reservation and the Itasca County in Greater Minnesota, as well as North Minneapolis through Northside Achievement Zone and the St. Paul Promise neighborhood. Each of those communities has 3 years of on-the-ground experience using very flexible federally funded scholarships that did not have a cap limit and allowed for those communities to make the best use of full-day, year-round programming for their most vulnerable children. And so I want to make sure we use the information that we have available, the results that have been generated by those 3 communities in the defining of the scholarship amounts to make sure that those most vulnerable children are served well. And then one last link, the bill goes to, I think, really nice lengths to identify teen parents, children of homeless families, foster care families. I think we know that those children are going to benefit most from a full-day, year-round experience. So just another reason to make sure we're very clear on that language. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Forsberg, and I believe we incorporated each of your suggestions in your previous testimony on the cap. May I assume you're in discussions with the Commissioner?
Yes, we certainly are, and of course want to bring those discussions here to you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, members and Mr. Chairman. Grace Kelleher with the Minnesota School Boards Association. I will be really quick in basically what we like. We like the Labor Day flexibility for the 1 year. We've had a lot of superintendents call us with that concern and wanting some flexibility around that date since it's such a late start. We really appreciate the flexibility for the 4-day week. You know, there are programs that are very successful there, and it's very meaningful to have that in there. We're really sort of also excited about what you did to the science credits for kids to take. You gave them some flexibility around agriculture, and in a state where 1 in 5 people are employed in agriculture, it makes sense our kids have more ability to look at that. Also, the computer science being used as a math credit. What a great idea. It really recognizes that logical thinking you get from math in a different way, and I really want to encourage those efforts. It just reaches out and grabs more kids coming forward. We also like from Senator Clausen's bill the temporary teacher licensure from 2 to 4 years. That's a big change, and we really
appreciate those words. We got a couple concerns we're going to work with members on and some concerns about effective dates, but we'll work with those before tomorrow's meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And if I may ask, on testing, any general thoughts?
Well, Mr. Chairman, certainly we like the idea of less testing. Where we might have a little concern, and that's why we want to reach out to some members and get their response, is over time that longitudinal list. I mean, the testing statute itself for the last 17 years hasn't been changed in only 3 years. So every year we seem to keep tweaking the animal, and we'd like to see some ongoing. We're also got concerns about what the federal government is going to do. So we'll get farther on that by tomorrow, Mr. Chairman. But we certainly, the reduction looks nice, but we just want to make sure we can continue to have information about how our kids are doing.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Josh Downham with the Minneapolis Public Schools. I want to echo the previous testifiers. This is a very strong bill. In particular, appreciate Senator Clausen's work around licensure portfolio and out-of-state licensure expansion so we can increase the pool of potential licensed teachers. As you know, we hired 500 teachers this last year. We really do need additional tools in our arsenal. We also appreciate the inclusion of the seals of biliteracy changes that will allow students in Minnesota to access college credit at MNSCU campuses for their demonstration of fluency in multiple languages in addition to English. And Senator, we do actually have concerns about the scaling back of the MCAs at 3 and 4 for math and 6 and 7 for English. We do use those assessments for our teacher development and evaluation. We look forward to working with the department and the committee on ways to kind of smooth that out.
And for the record, you could continue to offer tests that we may eliminate or not require.
Certainly, that's correct.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the draft policy bill? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tony Quillis, and I'm representing Hospitality, Minnesota. Mr. Chairman, I think the words were spoiler alert. I think it was Monday night when we talked about it, but just to give you a different face on this, because it's usually Mr. Bagnoli and Mr. Carlson, and I've taken an oath to work with them and come up and just object, Mr. Chairman, obviously to Article 2, Section 65 on the school start date. And I just wanted to get that on the record, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Further testimony before we proceed to other bills. Welcome to the committee.
My name is Rachel Berger, and I represent Decoding Dyslexia, a group of parents locally that are working on. We've been working on advocacy for the past 2 years for our dyslexic children's needs in the state of Minnesota, and I want to thank you for you and the committee members for the support this session with the hearings and collaboration on this issue. I just wanted to comment on the comment that was made earlier regarding the definition. And
we're referencing Mr. Lundell's testimony?
Yes, I'm
okay.
sorry, I wasn't certain who that was.
Just for others that, okay.
The use and the terminology in the definition is something that that is consistent with the DSM, with the National Institute of Health, and with what the International Dyslexia Association uses when qualifying what dyslexia is. And quite in fact, dyslexia is a specific learning disability, so I think not having that term in there would make it awfully confusing to people on whether it is a disability or it is not. It is a specific learning disability. So I just wanted to clarify that we're being consistent. There are other states who have passed dyslexia definition in legislation, and we're using the terminology that they are using. This isn't something that we have crafted on our own. We're trying to be consistent with the bodies that determine what dyslexia is.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to be in support here of decoding dyslexia. I'm a Minnesota licensed teacher, and just how worthwhile it would be to have.
And please, for the record, restate your name.
Oh, my name is Kira Campbell. Sorry.
Thank you.
And how worthwhile it would be for teachers to be able to know what specifically dyslexia is, and to know that they can use this term with students in schools, and a much better term than having nothing to go with it. Otherwise, students right now are just being labeled as lazy or just not wanting to do anything. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any further testimony before we proceed on? Mr. Heller, welcome.
Thank you, Senate Education Committee, Mr. Wigger, Chair, and members for this opportunity to speak on, I think it's 360 is the bill?
Excuse me?
The bill is 360, is that correct?
It's Senate File 1495.
1495?
Yes, we have a delete all amendment, which was posted, and we have hard copies here, and then we'll be
I do have a
action tomorrow.
Thank you, Chair.
So if it pertains to the policy bill.
It is, and it's about accessibility. Currently, I've been working on a complaint for about 3 years about how it struck through underlying and plain language on these bills that are read out loud for the blind and visually impaired. I've yet to clarify from anybody at the legislature or whoever is a power user of JAWS that that's really functional. I think that's important for engagement for those individuals that don't have the access, perhaps like I may have. I hope that somebody can provide a reference that can be clarified. I think that's important as we continue to move on accessibility law at the Capitol with legislature. Regarding this one testifier, I happen to heard the word dyslexia. I unofficially represent the twice exceptional and print disabled, and hopefully we're going to hear a bill about this soon. I've had a lot of experience with those that are labeled language-based disability from the neuroscience group, or something like I heard earlier, SLD, Pacific Learning Disability. And if they are taking the word out, dyslexia, even though it's a medical terminology, I think it's very relevant to one specific thing. I do believe these individuals have a high ability and potential of learning. However, if you take the word dyslexia out, I think it kind of takes away from what the National Institute of Science of Child Development said in 1997 from Ms. Shayowitz when they decided that dyslexia was a real thing for child development. And hopefully it's not going to be removed, but that the committee, when they come together with the legislature, the House, that they consider that word, that it needs to be in statute, because I do know specifically for myself, I understand it orally, but when it comes to writing, it's pretty hard for my ability regarding the print area, being able to spell. And I know for a fact my experience with school personnel is we can't hold people accountable for something they don't know how to do for word analysis when it comes to early intervention for the K through 3 learners. So again, the relevance to this is to bring to the fact that if these are the part of the print disability people found in the Higher Education Opportunity Act of 2008 next to the blind, and it's all about meeting the effectiveness of the printed word, that would be appropriate again to include this in this bill if it's missing. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
And thank you for your participation, Mr. Heller. And there are, the advocates that had just previously testified, but perhaps you can have a conversation following the meeting regarding mutual concerns. Is there anyone else that'd like to testify on Senate File 1495, the delete all? This will be the last time I call out on that. Is there anyone additionally? Okay, members, we will adopt the delete all amendment tomorrow when we meet, and then we will look at potential amendments, confer with various persons to the extent you think that's helpful, and providing as much information as we can for the Department of Education for many of their provisions. Please get to them if there's a need for clarification. There's a significant amount of collaboration, of consensus building that has gone into this draft, and I compliment each of you for your good faith efforts in doing that, and that's why we have reached a great deal of support. Can it improve? We can always improve, and to the extent we've had some additional comments, suggestions, we'll make that our goal.